Hello everybody and welcome along to this video, which is Mr. Johnson Teaches the Colon, which is part of my core skills revisions videos. These ones focusing on some of the punctuation marks that you want to be using when you're doing your writing. The colon's a really useful piece of punctuation. You will have been taught it at some point in school before, absolutely definitely at primary school and certainly throughout secondary school. It may be that you've forgotten how to use it, and that's what this video is going to try and remind you, some ways that you can use the colon in your work. During this video, be ready to pause because there will be exercises for you to have a go at, but more importantly, as I'm going through, have some pen and paper ready and write down the things you hear. It will help you remember those things when you finish watching this video. So don't just sit back and listen, actually make sure you are actively doing things as this video goes on, and it means you're much more likely to remember those things. So it's more than just the eyes of a smiley face, so I've put in the top right of this screen, and let's get started having a look at the colon. And let's talk more broadly about punctuation first. Because why we use punctuation is it's an instruction from you to your reader. When you are writing, in your head, there is a certain sound to what you're saying. Punctuation helps communicate those sounds. It tells your reader where to emphasise, where to pause, how long to pause for, and what to do with their voice. So make sure you're using punctuation. The thing on the screen there is meant to be a little bit light-hearted. It shows you the importance of punctuation because without it, meaning can be very much lost. So if you look at the writing in the top right of that picture, it says, "I like cooking my family and my pets." Now, that is quite a, not the sort of thing I'd want to be friends with, a person who's saying things like that, but it shows you the importance of commas in that situation. There are commas needed in that sentence to change it from, "I like cooking my family and my pets" to, "I like cooking my family and my pets." And the commas would make that meaning so much clearer. So that's the point I wanted to make with that little screen there. It's that punctuation actually really matters. So before we move any further, we just need to recap and understand that sentences have clauses. If you watched any of my other videos, you may have seen me recap this already, but it's really important to understand that punctuation goes in certain places. You can't just put it anywhere. It has a certain place, and generally those places are between clauses. Clauses, as it says there, a clause is part of a sentence which contains a verb. A bit like this then, we went to the beach, that is a clause. It's also in this case a sentence as well. That sentence is made up of one clause. A clause in its most simple way, if you're struggling with the idea so far, you could think of it as a main idea. But really it's actually to do with verbs. So there's one, here's another one. That is a sentence which contains two clauses. So one sentence that time, but two clauses. We went to the beach and played volleyball. And you've got your two verbs going on there in bold, but also they're joined together by a connective. So in that sentence, the connective is joining two clauses. You may have heard them called conjunctions. But yep, in its simplest way, we need to be clear about clauses. Now, sometimes commas just aren't enough. This sentence needs some punctuation in it. Never forget this point, think before you open your mouth. Jumbles. There's two ideas going on there, but they just fall into each other. They collide and crash because there's no punctuation. Yet, the comma there, never forget this point, think before you open your mouth, doesn't really work. It's not strong enough. Commas aren't a strong piece of punctuation. They just show a boundary between ideas. What we want to do here is in fact use a colon. Never forget this point, think before you open your mouth. The colon is stronger there, and it has a deliberate function which I'm going to talk to you about in a second. And there they are. So top right, that's exactly what the colon looks like in case you're in any doubt. It is a dot above another dot. It's slightly different from the semicolon, which is a full stop above a comma. In this case we've got two whole dots. And there are the two functions on the screen for you. It can introduce a list, but it also can separate two different clauses. Ideas. So let's look at the first one in green. This is a list, and many of you will have used it for this purpose. She wanted to see 3 cities in Italy: Rome, Florence and Venice. And I meant to have a full stop at the end there. But the colon in that sentence, look at it. It introduces the list of things, or cities in this case, that she wants to see. So hopefully that's a fairly straightforward way of using it, putting it before a list of items, and then there are commas in that list dividing up the items. Now in the purple, let's have a look at that one, separating two different clauses. The town reminded me of my childhood vacations. Both were on the beach. So the town is reminding this person of where they went on holiday. and then the extra detail is both were on the beach. So in that sentence, what you've got there are two clauses, but the second clause is like an extra bit of detail added to the first clause. It doesn't really want to be in brackets. Brackets just look a bit sort of clumsy there. A comma isn't strong enough. A semicolon wouldn't work there either. If you've watched my semicolon video, you'll know that semicolons, roughly, there's a sort of equal clause on either side. And this one, those clauses aren't equal, by which I mean the first one's really long and detailed. The second one is much shorter. It's not always about the length, but in that sentence, a colon works really well. It adds the extra detail. And with that example here, I was exhausted. I hadn't slept for more than 2 hours all night. Two clauses. The first one being about being really tired. The second one sort of explaining it a little bit more. The full stop could be used there. Depends. It just seems a little bit easy, a bit simple as a sentence. Whereas you could then look at this one. I was exhausted. I hadn't slept for more than 2 hours all night. As I said earlier, commas aren't strong enough to do that. It's more than a pause needed there, like a little pause. It needs to be something stronger, which is where, again, you might have predicted the colon in that sentence. I was exhausted. I hadn't slept for more than 2 hours all night. The first three words, I was exhausted, need to be coupled and linked up to the next set of words. The next set of words give you a bit more detail. I was exhausted. Why? I hadn't slept for more than 2 hours all night. So look at how the colon introduces some extra ideas linked to the first idea. This is something you may have seen in primary school classrooms, depends on your primary school, but a man called Alan Peat created a whole load of sort of writing cards, and this one's one that I really like as well. It's sort of what I've been talking about already. DD with a colon between it, which is description details. So if we look at the examples in red, the vampire is a dreadful creature. It kills by sucking all the blood from its victims. So it's dreadful is the description in the first clause. The second clause gives you a bit more detail about what it does. Same one for the snails in the second example. Snails are slow. Okay, there's a bit of description. They're slow. Add the extra detail after the colon. They take hours to cross the shortest of distances. And the third one there is the one that I just used with you. So what you've got there are sentences which have a clause describing something followed by a second clause which explains it in a little bit more detail. You'll see that in other examples coming up, but that might be the thing for you which makes colons just come alive and make them a little bit clearer for you, remembering description details. Because ultimately I hope you're watching this video because you want to be trying to use more colons in your work. So it's time for you to have a go. The pause symbol is up there. So on the screen are 5 examples, and those examples are all requiring a colon. Sometimes it's because there's a list, and other times it's because it's introducing sort of an extra part of the sentence, like an extra clause. So I can see that number 5 I've made a mistake, but never mind. I've given you number 5 already. However, number 5, actually looking at it, is missing something else. So there you go, an extra bonus little challenge for you. The colon is in number 5, but something else is missing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go quiet for 5 seconds, and in that 5 seconds I want you to pause this video, write these ones down, inserting the colon, and then we'll go through the answers together. And this is me going quiet now. And you're back with me, so I'm presuming you've got those written. If you haven't, you should. And now let's go through the answers. So number 1, watch out for the danger, the killer on the loose. So we've got watch out for the danger, and then what is that danger? Let's introduce it. It's the killer on the loose. And in case you didn't see, the colon has just appeared inside the sentence there, as it will for the next one. The house had many spooky features. The garden and the front door were just the start. So what are our 2 clauses? We've got a house with spooky features, and then we need to introduce what they are. So if I reveal that, the garden and the front door were just the start. So there's the idea, and then there's the detail added after it. Number 3, I'll bring along some important equipment, including my hat and my harness. We have a sentence here which is introducing a list. So we need to put our colon after the word including, and then the list comes, my hat and my harness. Number 4, you will need to complete a task for me, unlocking the church tonight. So this is almost like introducing one. You need to complete a task for me. Well, what is that task? It's unlocking the church tonight. So it goes after the me. And although I haven't got a transition ready here, I'll tell you number 5. This is what I like cooking. That one I forgot to. What a jumble. That's where the colon was. And then I said to you, you need to add something else. Something else was, this is the one which needs the commas. I tell you, this is what I like: cooking, comma, my family, comma, and my pets. That would make that a correct example. So there you go, there's some in action. And what I want to do is summarise, but also draw your attention to my examples on the right there. So in the yellow box, remember, colons introduce a list of items. In some ways, I would call that the most simple use of a colon. Colons introduce an idea. So actually, as we've seen already, and in the examples on your right hand side there, they sort of add extra idea to the first clause. Please remember that they can't be parachuted into sentences. By that I mean you can't just drop them in to sentences you've already written. You need to write sentences that need colons. There's a certain sound to a sentence with a colon, and you won't be able to just drop them correctly into your work. And finally, in that yellow box, as we talked about a bit earlier, the description detail sentences could be used for these ones. On the right hand side are 10 sentences, 5 you've seen already and 5 that you haven't, all of which use colons. And I hope by reading through those it might clear up how to use a colon for you. So that's the end of this video. I thank you for watching it all to the end, and well done to you if you have. So hopefully that's cleared it up. Colons can be used in creative writing. They can also be used in non-fiction writing, like speeches and like magazine articles, which you will be asked to use at GCSE. Ultimately, whether you are a Year 7 student or a Year 11 student or somewhere in between, using colons, semicolons, dashes and other punctuation correctly will make your writing so much more mature and grown up. So I wish you the very best of luck when it comes to you doing this. Show off your writing to your teacher, and I bet if you get these right, they'll be really impressed. So thanks for listening, and goodbye everybody.